Hello everyone and welcome back. Tonight's video is 6 terrifying true Appalachia Trail horror stories. Stretching for thousands of miles, the Appalachian Trail is known for its beauty. But hidden in those endless woods are stories that are anything but peaceful. From unexplained figures watching hikers to terrifying encounters far from civilization, these true tales will make you think twice before stepping onto the trail alone. If you enjoy these horror stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? I always love seeing where you're tuning in. Now, let's begin. Mark was a strong hiker. He had been on the Appalachian Trail for weeks. The sun was warm, the birds sang. He felt good. Today, he was going to reach a shelter before dark, but he was running a bit late. The shadows began to grow long. The forest started to feel different as evening came. A quiet hum filled the air, the kind that happens when the day cools down. Then he heard it. A soft rhythmic tap tap tap. It sounded like wood hitting wood, but it was too even, too regular, not like an animal. He stopped. He listened hard. The tapping stopped too. Mark frowned. He stood still for a full minute listening to the silence. Only the wind rustling leaves. He shook his head. Must be a woodpecker, he thought. Or maybe just his tired mind playing tricks. He started walking again. Tap, tap, tap. There it was again. Now it sounded a little closer. Mark's spine tingled. He stopped again. The tapping stopped. His heart started to beat a little faster. This wasn't right. Animals don't stop and start their sounds like that when a human is near. This felt like it was listening to him. Mark felt a cold dread creep into his stomach. He took a deep breath. He tried to tell himself it was nothing. Just the woods. He started walking faster. He wanted to get to that shelter. He picked up his pace, pushing hard. The tapping began again, keeping time with his steps. Tap, 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 faster now. It was definitely following him. Mark's mouth went dry. His skin prickled. He looked around wildly. The trees stood tall and dark. Every shadow looked like it was hiding something. He saw no one. Nothing moved. But the sound was there, always behind him, always keeping pace. Now, he also heard a low, raspy whisper, like many voices speaking at once, but too soft to understand. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language he knew. It was just a jumble of low, breathy sounds mixed with the tapping. Fear began to grip him. He broke into a run. His pack bounced on his back. His breath came out in ragged gasps. He didn't care about twisted ankles now. He just wanted to get away. The tapping and the whispering grew louder. They were very close. Too close. He felt like he could almost feel something breathing down his neck. Then, just at the edge of his vision, he saw it. A tall, dark shape. It moved too smoothly, too quickly, between the trees. It was larger than any person, larger than any bear. It seemed to flow through the forest, not walk. Mark didn't stop to think. He just pushed harder, his legs burning. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He stumbled on a root, falling hard to his knees. His flashlight flew from his hand, spinning into the darkness. He scrambled to his feet, eyes wide, looking for it. The tapping stopped. The whispering stopped. Only the sound of his own ragged breathing filled the air. Then, he heard a rustle right beside him. A heavy, slow breath. Mark turned his head slowly. In the gloom, just a few feet away, he saw 2 eyes. They glowed faintly, a dull yellow color. They were large, unblinking, and full of something cold and old. They were watching him. Just watching. Mark could not move. He could not scream. He could only stare into those terrible eyes. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished. The darkness was total again. No tapping, no whispering, no eyes. Just the terrifying silence. Mark didn't wait. He fumbled for his flashlight, found it, and ran again. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs felt like lead. He ran until he saw the small, familiar shape of the shelter ahead. He burst inside, slamming the door shut. He spent the night huddled in his sleeping bag, shaking, listening to every sound. The sun rose, finally. Mark walked out, pale and tired. He finished his hike, but he was changed. He never told anyone exactly what he saw. What could he say? What even was it? The woods still whisper to him sometimes, and he still hears that tap, tap, tap in his dreams. What was it watching him? And why did it stop? These questions haunt him even now. Sarah was an experienced solo hiker. She loved the peace of the trail, the way the trees smelled after rain, the sound of crickets at night. This trip, she was heading north through Virginia. One evening, she set up her tent near a quiet stream. The spot felt perfect, hidden away. She cooked her dinner and watched the last light fade from the sky. As darkness fell, a strange feeling settled over her. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a heavy silence. The crickets stopped chirping. The usual night sounds were gone. It was too quiet. She zipped herself into her tent, telling herself she was just tired. She read for a bit, then turned off her headlamp. That's when she heard it. A faint humming sound. It was very low, like a deep vibrating string. It seemed to come from all around her. It wasn't a natural sound. Sarah sat up in her sleeping bag, listening. The humming grew a little louder, a little closer. It felt like it was inside her head. A cold shiver ran down her back. She reached for her phone, but there was no signal, as usual. She grabbed her small knife, just in case. The humming grew stronger, a low, steady drone that made her teeth ache. It felt like it was pressing in on the tent. She could almost feel the air vibrating with the sound. Then she heard something else. A rustling, but not like an animal. It sounded like someone dragging heavy branches across the ground. Slowly, carefully. And it was moving in a circle around her tent. Sarah held her breath. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it would burst through her chest. The dragging sound continued, round and round. Sometimes it would stop for a moment, then start again, always moving in a slow circle. It sounded too big to be a person. Too slow for an animal. She pictured something large, lumbering, just outside her thin tent fabric. What was it doing? Why was it circling? The humming continued, a constant, unsettling presence. Sarah pressed herself against the back of her tent, trying to make herself as small as possible. She didn't dare move. She didn't dare breathe too loudly. She just listened to the horrifying symphony of the low hum and the heavy dragging, knowing that something was out there, right beside her. Hours passed like this. Or maybe it was only minutes. Time seemed to stretch and warp. Every shadow on the tent wall seemed to be the outline of a monstrous shape. She imagined glowing eyes, ragged claws, ancient rotting teeth. Her mind conjured up every horror story she had ever heard. Was this what they meant by things in the woods? Finally, just before dawn, the humming slowly faded. The dragging sound stopped. A deep, heavy silence returned, but this silence felt different from before. It felt like a watchful quiet, like whatever had been there had just stepped back into the shadows, waiting. Sarah waited until the first sliver of light appeared in the sky. She slowly, carefully unzipped her tent. She peered out. Nothing. The woods looked normal, peaceful even. But when she stepped outside, she saw it. On the damp ground around her tent, in a perfect, unbroken circle, were deep gouges. Like something heavy had been dragged slowly and repeatedly around her camp. The marks were fresh. She touched one with her finger. It was soft, like fresh earth had been disturbed. There were no footprints, no claw marks, just these strange, heavy grooves, forming a perfect ring around where her tent had stood. She packed her gear faster than she ever had in her life. She didn't even make coffee. She just wanted to get away. She hiked for hours without stopping, looking over her shoulder constantly. The silence that morning felt heavier, colder. Sarah finished her hike, but she never camped alone again. The image of those circular gouges, the memory of that low hum, they stayed with her. What was circling her tent that night? What was it trying to do? The answers never came, but the chilling questions still linger in her mind. Every time she thinks of those dark, silent woods. David loved to take pictures. He was hiking with two friends, Mike and Emily, through the mountains of North Carolina. It was a beautiful fall day. The leaves were bright red and gold. David often stopped to get the perfect shot. His friends were a bit faster, so he always told them to go on. He'd catch up. One afternoon, a thick fog rolled in quickly. It came out of nowhere, covering everything in a ghostly white mist. You couldn't see more than a few feet in front of you. David usually loved fog for photos, but this was different. It felt heavy and cold. He called out for Mike and Emily. "Hello? Guys?" His voice sounded swallowed by the fog. No answer. He tried again, louder. "Mike, Emily, where are you?" Then he heard it. "David? Over here." It was Mike's voice. It sounded muffled, far away, and a little strange. Almost like it was coming from inside a tunnel, but it was his friend. David felt a wave of relief. "Coming," he shouted, and started walking towards the sound. "David! Hurry!" That was Emily's voice. Also strange, a bit high-pitched and wavering, but it was them. He kept walking, trying to follow the sounds. The fog was so thick, he could barely see the trail markers. He pushed through damp branches, tripping on roots he couldn't see. The voices kept calling, always just ahead. "This way, David." "We're waiting." But they never seemed to get closer. Instead, they seemed to lead him deeper into the fog, further off the main path. The air grew colder. He felt a prickle of unease. Why weren't they stopping? Why did their voices sound so stretched? Then he heard Mike's voice call his name again. But this time, it sounded exactly like Mike. Clear, close. And it came from the opposite direction of the other voices. David froze. His blood ran cold. He stood in the silent, thick fog, confused and terrified. Two sets of voices? One was real. The other... What was the other? He strained his ears. The first set of voices, the warped ones, were still calling. A faint echo now. "David, we're here." They sounded like something trying very hard to sound human, but failing. The real Mike called again, a little further away now. David knew he had to choose. He risked a quick look around. Through the swirling white mist, he thought he saw something move. A tall, skinny shape, darker than the fog itself. It seemed to sway, then vanish. David's heart hammered. He knew then. The first voices were not his friends. They were trying to lure him. Panic seized him. He didn't know which way was back to the trail. He didn't know which way was safe. He felt like he was caught in a trap. He crouched down behind a large rock, pulling his knees to his chest. He covered his mouth with his hand to stop himself from breathing too loud. He just stayed still, listening to the two sets of calls fading in the distance. The fake voices, then the real ones. He waited for what felt like hours. The fog was a cold blanket. He felt alone and helpless. He imagined the tall, dark shape moving silently through the mist, searching for him. He imagined it had eyes, watching him. He imagined it knew exactly where he was, just waiting for him to move. Finally, very slowly, the fog began to lift. The first weak rays of sun appeared through the trees. David waited a long time, then carefully stood up. He was completely lost, but he was alive. He spent the next few hours using his compass and map, moving slowly, until he finally found a trail marker. Eventually, he found his friends, frantic with worry. He tried to explain what happened, but they just shook their heads. They hadn't heard any other voices. Only David's calls, then Mike's for him. David knew what he heard. He knew what he almost walked into. What were those things in the fog? What were they trying to do? The memory of those twisted voices, calling his name, still makes him shiver. He never takes a hike lightly anymore. And he never, ever wanders off alone in the fog. Liam loved collecting small, interesting things he found on the trail. A shiny rock, a bird feather. He saw them as gifts from the woods. One morning, he was hiking a less used section of the trail in Maine. He saw something strange. On the side of the path, a small pile of sticks. They were laid out in a pattern, like a small rough star. It was very neat. He thought it was odd. Maybe another hiker's art project? He took a picture and moved on. The next day, he saw another one. This time, it was a pile of small, flat stones. They were stacked in a perfect tower, much taller than it should have been. It looked like it would fall over any second, but it didn't. Liam felt a small shiver. This wasn't normal. Who would do this? And why? It felt too deliberate, too strange for just a passing hiker. He walked faster, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. Over the next few days, he kept seeing them, always off the main path, but visible if you looked closely. More stick figures, more stone towers. Some were larger now, some had animal bones woven into them, small bird skulls or tiny jawbones. They weren't just random. They felt like symbols, like messages. But for whom? And from whom? Liam started to feel watched. Every time he found a new symbol, the air around him felt colder. The woods seemed quieter. He would stop looking around, his heart beating fast. He saw nothing, only trees. But the feeling was strong. He started checking behind him every few minutes. He felt a creeping dread, a sense that these things were not just put there by chance. They were placed there for him. One evening, he set up his camp near a small pond. As he was laying out his sleeping bag, he noticed something in the soft earth right outside his tent. Another symbol. This one was different. It was a rough drawing, etched into the dirt with a stick. It looked like a figure, tall and thin, with long spidery arms, and its head was just a blank circle. It was facing his tent. Liam felt a scream catch in his throat. This wasn't just a random symbol on the trail anymore. This was right outside his tent. It felt personal. It felt like a warning. Or a threat. He quickly covered the drawing with leaves, then hurried inside his tent. He zipped it up tight, wishing the thin nylon walls were made of steel. He couldn't sleep. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made him jump. He stared at the dark fabric of his tent, imagining the blank-faced figure standing just outside, watching him. He heard faint whispers. They seemed to come from all directions, swirling around his tent. They weren't words he could understand. Just a soft, sibilant murmur, like many voices speaking in a language he couldn't grasp. He didn't dare turn on his flashlight. He didn't want to see what might be out there. He just lay there, frozen, listening to the whispers and the sounds of the night, knowing that something was waiting. Something had left him a message, and it knew he was inside. When the sun finally began to rise, painting the sky with pale light, Liam slowly, carefully unzipped his tent. The drawing was still covered by leaves. He kicked them away. It was still there. The tall, thin figure with the blank head staring at his tent. But now, small, dark stones had been placed on the outline of the head, making two small, dark eyes. Liam didn't back up. He just grabbed his bag, left his tent and everything else, and ran. He ran until his legs burned and his lungs ached. He didn't look back. He just ran until he found a road, then a town. He never went back for his gear. He couldn't. The image of those dark eyes on the blank face, the whispering voices, the growing number of symbols, it broke something inside him. What was leaving those things? What did it want? And how did it know where he would be? Those questions still burn in his mind whenever he thinks of the deep, dark woods and the strange messages left there. Alex and Ben were hiking buddies. They had done many long trips together on the Appalachian Trail. They loved the quiet, the sound of their own footsteps, the rustle of leaves. One afternoon, they were walking through a particularly dense part of the forest in Tennessee. The sun was warm, but the trees kept it cool. It was a perfect day. Then Alex heard it, a soft, clear sound, like someone singing, a woman's voice. It was beautiful and very strange. "Did you hear that?" Alex asked, stopping. Ben stopped too, tilting his head. "Hear what?" "I didn't hear anything." Alex frowned. "Singing, like a lullaby, very faint." He listened again. It was still there, a gentle, humming melody, rising and falling. It felt ancient, like it had been sung for a long, long time. "No," Ben said. "I don't hear a thing." He looked around. "Are you sure you're not just tired, man?" Alex shook his head. "No, it's real. Listen." He closed his eyes. The singing was clear to him, coming from deeper in the woods, off the trail. It sounded too perfect, too pure to be a real person. No echo, no breaks, just a steady, lovely hum. They started walking again. Alex could still hear it. He tried to point it out to Ben, but Ben heard nothing. This made Alex feel very uneasy. How could one of them hear it, and the other not? The sound was so clear to Alex. It was like it was calling just to him. The singing continued, always just ahead, always pulling him slightly off the main path. It was a simple tune, soft and gentle, but it had a strange power. It made Alex want to follow it, to see where it came from. He kept looking towards the sound, his feet almost wanting to turn and go that way. Ben noticed Alex looking away from the path. "Hey, stay focused," he said. "We don't want to get lost." Alex nodded, but the urge was strong. The music felt like a secret, waiting for him. It felt like something wonderful. He told Ben, It feels like it's telling me to come closer." Ben laughed, a nervous sound. "It's just the woods, man. Or you're hearing things." But then Ben paused. His eyes widened a little. "Wait, I hear something now." The music had grown louder. Ben could hear it too. It was still soft, but now it had a clear, almost childlike quality, like a child's gentle hum. It twisted his gut. "It's right there," Ben whispered, pointing into the trees. "Let's just see what it is." His voice sounded dreamy. His eyes had a far-off look. Alex felt a jolt of alarm. This was wrong. This was very wrong. "No, Ben," he said firmly. "We shouldn't. It's too far off the trail. We don't know what it is." But Ben started to walk towards the sound, drawn by it. "It's so beautiful, Alex. Don't you want to know?" Alex grabbed Ben's arm. "No, we are not going." He pulled hard. Ben resisted, his gaze still fixed on the deep woods where the sound came from. Alex had to use all his strength to turn Ben around, away from the strange, luring melody. The music grew louder. It felt like it was wrapping around them. It made Alex's head spin. He felt a dizzying pull, like the woods themselves were trying to turn him back towards the sound. He could see a faint, shimmering light deep in the trees, in the direction of the music. It was too far to make out what it was, but it pulsed softly, like a distant heartbeat. "We have to go," Alex shouted, his voice cracking. He didn't know what it was, but he knew they were in danger. He knew this music was a trap. He pushed Ben forward, back towards the main trail, scrambling over roots and rocks. He didn't care about the path anymore. He just wanted to get away from that sound. The music kept calling, changing now, almost a whine, a plea. Alex heard Ben hum along, a low, soft sound from his throat. Ben seemed to be fighting something inside himself. Alex just kept pushing them forward, his heart pounding. He felt like he was ripping himself and Ben away from a powerful, unseen hand. Finally, they stumbled back onto the familiar, well-worn path. Alex checked his compass. They had been pulled almost a mile off course. He dragged Ben along the trail, not stopping until they reached a busy road. Ben slowly came back to himself. He seemed confused. He couldn't remember much of what happened after the music got louder. But sometimes, when he's deep in thought, Alex still hears Ben hum, that same simple, ancient melody. What was singing in those woods? What was that shimmering light? And what would have happened if they had followed it deeper into the dark? The questions stay with Alex, a cold knot of dread, every time he thinks of those tunes in his memory. Chris loved the feeling of progress on the trail. Each mile was a small victory. He was hiking in Pennsylvania, a section known for its dense woods and rocky paths. One afternoon, he came to a very old gnarled oak tree. It had a strange, twisting branch that looked like an arm reaching out. Someone had carved a small, rough X into its trunk. It was a clear landmark, one he made a mental note of. He checked his map, confirmed his direction, and kept going. The sun was high. The air was still and warm. Chris walked for what he felt was a good hour. He was humming a tune, enjoying the peace. Then he looked up and froze. Right in front of him was the exact same gnarled oak tree, the same twisted branch, the same rough X carved into the trunk. His heart gave a lurch. Had he somehow walked in a circle? He pulled out his map and compass. His compass pointed north, exactly where he wanted to go. He couldn't have made a loop. He looked at his map, looked at the trail. It all seemed to match. But the tree, it was exactly the same. He felt a cold knot of confusion in his stomach. He shook his head. Must be another tree that looked very similar, he told himself. Or maybe he just wasn't paying attention. He took a photo of the tree, just in case, and walked on, a little faster now. He walked for another hour. The path was clear. He passed a stream, a small pile of rocks. Everything felt normal. Then he saw it again. The gnarled oak tree, the twisted branch, the X. It was impossible. His compass still pointed north. He hadn't turned. He hadn't looped. Yet, here it was, for the third time. A deep chill settled over him. This was not right. He started to feel a frantic panic. Was he going crazy? Was the trail playing a trick on him? He looked around wildly. The trees were dense. The path ahead looked the same as the path behind. He felt trapped in a repeating nightmare. He looked at his photo of the tree. It was identical, every detail. He tried to run. He pushed through the brush, ignoring the trail, just wanting to get away from that tree. He ran until his lungs burned. He ran until his legs ached. He leaned against a tree, gasping for breath, sweat stinging his eyes. When he looked up, there it was, the gnarled oak, the X. It was like the forest itself had shifted, pulling him back. He slumped to the ground, his mind racing. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. He was stuck, but stuck where? In a small circle that only he could see. Or was the trail itself somehow looping him back to this spot, over and over, mocking him? He sat there for a long time, watching the tree. The sun didn't seem to move much. Time felt strange, stretched out, and still. He heard a rustle in the leaves. He looked up. Through the trees, he saw a figure, a hiker, walking slowly, head down. The hiker passed the gnarled oak, paused, looked confused, and then walked on. It was a woman, wearing a bright blue jacket. Chris watched her go. A few minutes later, he saw her again. The exact same woman, the exact same bright blue jacket, walking the exact same way. She passed the tree, paused, looked confused, and walked on. It was like watching a movie clip played on repeat. Over and over. He watched her pass the tree 5 more times. Each time she looked just as lost, just as confused. He tried to call out to her, but his voice was gone. Then he saw himself, or a ghost of himself. A shadowy figure in his clothes, passing the tree, pausing, looking confused, and walking on. It was a faint, blurry image, like a memory given shape. It was him, stuck in the loop. Chris forced himself to move. He knew he couldn't stay there. He had to break the pattern. He looked at the tree. He took a deep breath. He didn't try to run away this time. Instead, he forced himself to walk towards the tree. He walked right up to it. He touched the X with his finger. It felt cold, smooth. Then, instead of continuing on the path, he turned 90 degrees into the thick woods, forcing a new path. He pushed through thorns and thick brush, ignoring the scratches, ignoring his compass. He just walked in a straight line, away from the path, away from the tree. He walked until the sun started to set. He walked until he couldn't see anything but endless trees. He finally stopped, exhausted, and made a rough camp. He didn't see the gnarled oak tree again. The next morning, he found a logging road and then a highway. He was off the trail. He never went back to that section. What was that place? Was it a trick of his mind? Or was that stretch of trail somehow broken, trapping hikers in an endless silent loop, forever reliving the same confusing steps? He thinks of the woman in the blue jacket and his own shadowy ghost and wonders if they are still there, endlessly walking past that gnarled oak tree. That was Chris's story. A chilling tale of a trail that refused to let him go. A landscape that twisted itself into a repeating nightmare. He found a way out, but the image of that gnarled oak tree and the endless parade of confused hikers, including a version of himself, stayed with him. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What parts of the trail are just different? What parts operate under rules we can't even begin to understand? You've heard 6 accounts now. 6 different people, 6 different terrifying experiences on the Appalachian Trail. Each one a glimpse into something deeply unsettling. Something that goes beyond the usual fears of a long hike. These aren't tales of bears or bad weather. They're about something far more ancient, far more clever, and far more disturbing. Think back to Mark, alone in the darkening woods, with that rhythmic tap 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 following him. That impossible, inhuman pace. The low, breathy whispers. And then, those glowing, unblinking eyes, just feet away in the blackness. What was watching him? Why did it track him so deliberately? And why did it simply vanish? The sheer helplessness of being hunted by an unseen force, an intelligence that is clearly not animal, is a terror that digs deep into your very bones. He made it to the shelter, but the trail had shown him a side of itself that shattered his peace. Then there was Sarah in her tent, surrounded by the heavy, low hum that vibrated the very air, and the slow, steady dragging circling her fragile shelter. The chilling realization that something large and unknown was not just passing by, but actively performing some strange, deliberate ritual around her. No footprints, just deep, perfect gouges in the earth. It wasn't an attack, not in the normal sense. It was something else. A presence, a demonstration, an unsettling statement from the wilderness itself. It leaves you wondering what dark purpose those circles served and what might have happened if she had stepped out. David's story showed us the true horror of manipulation. That thick, suffocating fog, and the 2 voices. One, a twisted, echoing imitation of his friends. The other, the real call for help. The realization that something in the mist was actively trying to lure him, to lead him astray, deeper into its domain. The tall, skinny shape he glimpsed darker than the fog itself, swaying and disappearing. It's a fear rooted in betrayal, in the idea that the very sounds you trust can be used against you. The decision to hide, to simply wait it out, was born of sheer raw terror. What was waiting for him in that fog? What were its true intentions? And Liam, the collector, finding those strange symbols, the neat stick figures, the impossible stone towers, the small grim animal bones woven into them, each one a message, growing more personal, more direct. And then, the drawing right outside his tent. A blank-faced, spindly figure looking right at him. And in the morning, those dark eyes, newly added to the drawing, staring. The sense of being watched, of being targeted, of an unseen entity communicating directly, chillingly, with him. It's not just scary. It's a violation of your personal space. A profound invasion of privacy by something that shouldn't exist. He ran, leaving everything behind. Because some things are not worth confronting. Alex and Ben's experience with the singing was perhaps the most insidious. A beautiful, ancient, lulling melody that only Alex could hear at first, then Ben. A song that felt like a secret, a gentle call, but one that held a powerful, dangerous pull. The way it drew Ben in, turning his eyes distant, making him want to follow. It wasn't a growl or a shriek, it was a siren's call in the deep woods, promising something enchanting, but hiding a deadly truth. The shimmering light in the distance, a faint pulse, adding to the mystery. Alex fought against it, not just for himself, but for his friend. What would they have found if they had followed that beautiful, terrible sound? What kind of beauty conceals such danger? And finally, Chris's encounter with the repeating oak tree. The trail itself bending, twisting, looping him back to the same spot over and over. A physical space where time and direction break down. And then, the ultimate horror. Seeing others, seeing a ghost of himself, caught in the same silent, endless loop. It's the fear of being truly trapped, not by a physical barrier, but by the very fabric of reality itself. A part of the trail where logic dies, and the impossible becomes the inescapable truth. Each of these stories, though different, shares a common thread, a sense of the unknown, an intelligence that is not human, not animal, but something else entirely, something ancient tied to the land, that watches, waits, and sometimes acts. It plays games, it lures, it frightens, it leaves its marks, and it leaves the hikers forever changed. They carry the memories, the questions, the lingering fear. A part of them is always looking over their shoulder, listening to the silence, wondering what else is out there, hidden just beyond the edge of our understanding. These accounts are not rare. Whispers of similar experiences echo across the entire length of the Appalachian Trail. Hikers share stories of impossible sounds, strange lights, feelings of intense dread, and moments where the world just felt wrong. It's almost as if the trail is a thin place, a veil between our known world and something else. A place where the boundaries blur, and the ancient spirits of the wild can step through. Is it the isolation, the exhaustion, the power of suggestion? Some people will say yes. They'll say the mind plays tricks when you're alone for too long. But these experiences are too specific, too unsettling, to simply be dismissed as tricks of the mind. How do you explain the physical gouges around Sarah's tent? The clear, distinct voices that only David could hear? The actual physical patterns left by Liam's unseen stalker? And Chris's looping reality? These are not mere thoughts. These are physical events, or events perceived with such clarity that they become real, undeniable trauma. The Appalachian Trail is a place of immense beauty, but it also carries a deep, dark history. This land has seen countless generations. It holds the echoes of old battles, of lost tribes, of struggles against the untamed wilderness. Perhaps these lingering energies, these old powers, are what awaken when we enter their domain. Perhaps we are simply visitors, and sometimes the true residents make their presence known. It makes you think about what we truly know about the world around us. How much is truly explained by science, and how much lies just beyond our grasp? These stories are not meant to scare you away from the trail. They are meant to make you think, to make you reflect on the vastness of the natural world and the mysteries it still holds. They remind us that for all our maps and our gear, we are still small, vulnerable beings in a world far older and stranger than we can ever fully comprehend. What would you do if you were out there, miles from help, and you heard that tap, tap, tap behind you? What if a beautiful, haunting song pulled you off the path, promising a secret wonder? Could you trust your own senses? Could you trust your sanity? And what if, when you got home, a piece of the trail, a piece of that fear, came back with you? These are the questions that linger. These are the questions that make these stories truly terrifying. The Appalachian Trail demands respect. not just for its physical challenges, but for its hidden depths. It's a place that strips away the layers of modern life, leaving you raw and open. And in that raw, open state, sometimes you become aware of things that usually stay hidden, things that belong to an older world. Consider the common thread in these stories: the sense of isolation followed by a deeply personal and often inexplicable intrusion. Mark was alone when the tapping began, but the eyes that watched him were intimate, directly focused on him. Sarah's tent, her most private space in the wilderness, became the center of a strange, circling ritual. David's identity, his friendships, were attacked by the mimicking voices in the fog. Liam's camp was directly targeted with a chilling, evolving message. Alex and Ben were lured by a beautiful sound meant specifically for them. And Chris was singled out, trapped in a repeating loop that only he and those like him seemed to experience. It's this personal nature of the encounters that makes them so unnerving. It's not just a general sense of danger. It's a feeling of being chosen, of being observed, of being the specific target of an unseen force. And that distinction, that sense of being individually marked, is a far more profound and lasting fear than any random animal encounter. Think about the psychological toll. Imagine pushing your body to its limits, day after day. Your mind already a little worn down by the constant effort and the endless green. Then suddenly, something impossible happens. Something that breaks all your rules of reality. How do you process that? How do you explain it to yourself? To others? Most people can't. They are left with a quiet terror, a seed of doubt planted deep in their minds. They know what they saw, what they heard, what they felt. But it doesn't fit. And that lack of fit, that impossible reality, is what truly haunts them. The woods themselves play a role. The Appalachian forests are ancient. They have stood for centuries, watching countless human lives pass through. Trees, especially old ones, are often seen in folklore as silent witnesses, even as living entities with their own kind of awareness. When you're deep within such a forest, with no clear horizon, no familiar landmarks, your senses can become distorted. The rustle of leaves can sound like footsteps. The creak of a branch can sound like a whisper. But what if those distortions aren't distortions at all? What if they are the true sounds of a world we've largely forgotten? It's often said that the trail provides. It provides challenge, beauty, peace. But sometimes it provides something else, something unsettling. A reminder that we are not always at the top of the food chain, not always in control. A reminder that there are other intelligences, other ways of being, that may not operate on our terms or our understanding. These stories often get dismissed as exhaustion, or vivid dreams, or simple mistakes. But the patterns are too similar. The feelings are too strong. The consequences too real. Hikers, after these events, often change their whole outlook. They become quieter, more watchful. They carry a new kind of respect for the wilderness, one tinged with a deep personal fear. What does it mean, for example, for a voice to imitate your friends, but subtly distort them? It suggests a cunning intelligence, one that understands human connection and how to break it. What does it mean for a landscape to loop you, to prevent you from leaving a certain spot? It suggests a power over space and time itself. These are not simple animal instincts. These are acts of a being that thinks, plans, and affects its environment in ways we can barely imagine. So, when you think about these stories, don't just think about the fear. Think about the implications. What kind of world are we truly living in? What ancient forces still hold sway in the untouched places? The Appalachian Trail, in its vastness and wildness, offers a glimpse into these questions. It challenges not just your body, but your very understanding of reality. And for some, it provides answers they wish they never found. The wilderness holds a certain indifference to human life. It can be beautiful and deadly without malice. But what these hikers experienced was beyond indifference. It was active. It was purposeful. And that is what makes it truly terrifying. It points to a world that actively pushes back. A world that has its own will, its own intentions. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. How much of our world is truly known? How much is still a mystery, waiting in the deep woods for the next unwary hiker to stumble upon it? What dark, ancient things sleep just out of sight? And what happens when they finally wake up? The Appalachian Trail is not just a path through the woods. It is a gateway. A place where the rules of our everyday world sometimes bend, sometimes break entirely. The sheer scale of it, stretching for thousands of miles, means there are countless isolated spots, untouched by human understanding for generations. These are the places where the veil between what we know and what we can't explain becomes thin. Think about the feeling of complete aloneness, the deep silence of the forest at night, broken only by your own breathing. Your senses become sharper, more alert. Every shadow seems deeper, every sound more distinct. In this state, your mind is open to suggestion perhaps, but also open to receiving something real, something truly extraordinary and terrifying that your normal, busy mind usually filters out. What if these encounters are not just random? What if there's a pattern, a purpose to what these entities do? The tapping and whispering that followed Mark, the circling around Sarah's tent, the luring voices for David, the personal symbols for Liam, the enchanting song for Alex and Ben, the looping trap for Chris. Each one feels like an experiment, a test, a deliberate interaction. Not just a scare, but a message, a demonstration of power. It raises questions about the very nature of these beings, if they are beings at all. Are they ghosts, ancient spirits of the land, cryptids, creatures not yet recognized by science, or something else entirely, something so foreign to human experience that we have no words for it? Whatever they are, they seem to possess an unsettling intelligence, a cruel cleverness that goes beyond mere instinct. They seem to understand human fear, human connection, and human vulnerability. Many cultures have stories of the wild man or woodfolk, strange, human-like figures that live deep in the forest. They are often depicted as tricksters, sometimes benevolent, but often dangerous. They lure travelers, cause them to get lost, or play cruel games. Could these modern Appalachian Trail stories be echoes of these ancient legends? Could these be the same entities, still lingering, still interacting with humans who venture into their domain? The trail is also a place of great energy. Mountains are often seen as sacred places, points where the earth's energy is strong. Perhaps certain spots on the Appalachian Trail, places where the geology is unusual or where tragic events have happened, become focal points for these strange occurrences. Places where the energy is just different, and those who are sensitive enough, or unlucky enough, stumble into them. Consider how these experiences affect the hikers for the rest of their lives. Mark carries the memory of those eyes. Sarah sees the gouges in her mind. David hears the distorted voices. Liam pictures the blank face with its new eyes. Alex hears the haunting melody. Chris sees the looping tree. These are not just bad memories. They are deep psychological wounds. They change how these people view the world, how they trust their own senses, how they sleep at night. The trail, in a way, takes a piece of them, even if they escape physically unharmed. It's easy to dismiss these stories from the comfort of our homes, surrounded by light and logic. But imagine yourself in their shoes, miles from anyone, phone dead, the sun setting, and something impossible begins to happen. Your mind races. Your body fills with dread. Every instinct screams at you to run. But where do you run to? The forest is endless, and the thing you're running from might already be inside your head. The Appalachian Trail offers solitude, and sometimes, in that solitude, you find more than you bargained for. You find the edges of your own understanding. You find the true, untamed wildness that still exists in the world. And sometimes, you find things that make you question everything. This isn't about telling you not to hike the trail. It's about respecting it, understanding that there are parts of it that defy explanation, parts that exist on their own terms, and that when you step into those parts, you become a participant in something ancient and mysterious, a witness to a world that hums with secrets just beneath the surface of what we can see. So, next time you are in the deep woods and the air grows still and a strange sound reaches your ears, remember these stories. Remember what others have faced, and ask yourself, what is truly out there, waiting in the shadows? The Appalachian Trail, for all its beauty, serves as a powerful reminder of how little we truly understand about the world around us. We build our cities, light our streets, and fill our lives with noise and distractions, but out there, in the deep, silent parts of the forest, the old world still exists. It breathes, it watches, and sometimes it interacts. These stories aren't just about strange noises or bumps in the night. They're about the shattering of a person's reality. When you are confronted with something that simply cannot be, yet undeniably is, it changes the very ground you stand on. It makes you question every explanation, every scientific fact you've ever learned. It opens up a door in your mind that can never quite be closed again. Think of the sheer bravery, or perhaps foolishness, it takes to keep going after such an event. Mark, after those glowing eyes vanished, still found the strength to run to the shelter. Sarah, seeing those perfect gouges, still packed her tent and hiked out. David, almost lured into the mist, still found his way back to his friends. Liam, horrified by the eyes on the drawing, still fled the camp. Alex fought against an unseen pull to save his friend. Chris, after being stuck in a loop, forced himself to break the pattern. These people faced something truly awful and managed to escape. But the escape wasn't just physical. It was a fight for their minds, their sanity, their very belief in what is real. The trail doesn't just ask for your physical strength. It asks for your mental toughness. It pushes you to your limits, and sometimes beyond. And when you're stripped bare, when your defenses are down, that's when these other things might make their move. They seem to prey on the vulnerable, the isolated, the ones who are already questioning their own limits. We often imagine the wilderness as something simple: trees, animals, rocks, water. But it's far more complex than that. It's an ecosystem of life, yes, but also of energy, of history, of unseen forces. The Native American tribes who lived on this land for thousands of years understood this. They knew the spirits of the mountains, the rivers, the forests. They held ceremonies, offered respect. Perhaps in our modern haste, we forget to show that same respect. Perhaps we barge into places where we are not truly welcome, and these ancient residents simply remind us of our place. What if the Appalachian Trail is more than just a path? What if it's a living entity itself, with its own moods and its own way of communicating? Sometimes it grants trail magic, an unexpected kindness, a moment of profound beauty. But sometimes it shows its darker side, a harsh lesson, a chilling encounter, a reminder of who is truly in charge. The sheer scale of the trail means that thousands of people walk it every year. And out of those thousands, a small but consistent number report experiences like these. Similar stories, similar feelings of dread, similar impossible events. This isn't just one person making up a story. It's a recurring theme, a pattern of the unexplained, woven into the very fabric of the trail's lore. And that's what makes these stories so powerful. They tap into a primal fear we all share. The fear of the dark, the fear of being alone, the fear of the unknown. But more than that, they tap into the fear that our comfortable, logical world is just a thin layer over something vast, strange, and potentially terrifying. So when you hear these tales, remember them. Let them settle in your mind, because they are not just stories. They are windows into a different reality, a reality that exists deep in the Appalachian woods, waiting for the next person to stumble upon its secrets. The trail never truly lets you go, and the questions it raises, they never truly fade. What would you do if the trail truly called to you in a way that defied all reason? These 6 stories are just a glimpse, a small window into the deeper, darker mysteries that sleep within the Appalachian Trail. Each person who shared their tale walked away with more than just sore feet and tired muscles. They carried a new kind of fear, a new way of seeing the world, a chilling understanding that not everything can be explained, not everything is safe, and not everything is human. The trail changes you. It tests your body, yes. It pushes your mind to its limits. But sometimes, it touches something deeper. It shows you the edge of what you believe is real. It pulls back the curtain, even for a moment, on forces that have existed for centuries, long before any trail was ever cut. Think of the silence, the deep, heavy quiet of the woods at night. It's in that silence that the impossible sounds can be heard. The tapping, the humming, the twisted voices, the ancient song. These are not just random noises. They are deliberate, they are calls. They are warnings. They are expressions of something that sees you, knows you, and sometimes wants to interact with you in ways you can't possibly understand. The physical evidence, like Sarah's gouges or Liam's marked drawing, forces us to confront these stories as more than just imagination. They are real scars on the earth, mirroring the scars left on the hikers' minds. They prove that something tangible, something with physical presence, was there. And that makes the whole thing even more unsettling. The Appalachian Trail is a place of immense power. It reminds us how small we are, how vulnerable. It reminds us that for all our advancements, for all our technology, there are still corners of this world that hold their secrets close. corners where the old magic, the old fear, is still very much alive. So, the next time you look at a map or plan a trip into the wilderness, remember these stories. Remember the feeling of being alone, deep in the trees. Remember the things that go bump in the night, or tap, or hum, or whisper your name. Ask yourself, what would you do if the forest itself seemed to twist and turn against you? What if the path you trusted led you into an endless loop? What if a beautiful sound called you to a place you should never go? These questions don't have easy answers, and maybe that's the real horror. That sometimes the most terrifying things are the ones we can never truly explain. The ones that simply exist just beyond our reach in the deep, dark woods of the Appalachian Trail. The trail gives and the trail takes, and sometimes it takes more than just your time. It takes your peace, and it leaves you with a lingering chill that never quite fades away. What would you do?